and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Chrissy Hodges. I do advocacy for OCD, particularly Pure O, which is also the name of my memoir. Yay! Talking about my experience in living with intrusive thoughts. I also am a certified peer support specialist working with people worldwide who live with OCD, providing support and normalization for what it's like to live with this disorder, as well as referrals for therapists. We can help you find someone anywhere in the world that can help with treatment. Speaking of treatment, if you are looking for ERP therapy through telehealth, NoCD is an app in OCD, but they also provide telehealth for people doing ERP. So check them out at treatmyocd.com. So I just wanted to pop on here. I've had a rough month. I have been sick. I got sick twice, which of course, as you know, if you saw my video a couple weeks ago about health OCD, that shit did not help. So I was all up in the I have rabies and every other possible death sentence health issue that there was. I am feeling better finally. Hopefully my immune system is on the mend after 2 rounds of antibiotics. But so it's been a little bit since I've been here, but it's great to be back. And I wanted to talk about something today. I actually posted on Instagram the other day and just got a lot of feedback, not only from the post, but in messages and emails. And so I know it's something really important for us. If you are on Instagram, follow me at PureOChrissy, CHRISSIE, and also subscribe here if you haven't already to my channel. I try to do videos once a week. I know I suck. Sometimes I don't. And I need to get better at doing them. I'm not like other people that are like, I do them on Tuesday and Thursday and this and this. I'm all like, I'll do one with this week. And here we are on Friday. Okay, so what I talked about in that post, which is what I want to bring to you today, is what it feels like when you're in an OCD spike and the feeling of risk that you might feel when you are contemplating whether you are choosing to believe it's OCD or not. So let me explain. And this sounds like a complex topic, so I'm going to try to break it down as much as I can. This is obviously not reassurance, and I'm certainly not telling you what to do or not do as far as compulsion, so know that. I'm not providing therapy or anything. I just wanted to help normalize this if you've experienced it. So one of the things that happened to me recently was, and I talked about it on a video, was health OCD and in relation to some things that had happened in my life. And the problem is, and this can also go for taboo intrusive thoughts. Now, it can go for everything too, but y'all know sometimes I focus more on the taboo stuff because it's easier to see when you're talking about kind of these complex topics. When the world thinks something is bad or inappropriate or scary or dangerous, okay? So when society feels that way, so the best example would be pedophilia, right? That is a horrible thing. And everybody has an inflammatory response to even the word pedophilia, right? So when you have POCD, which is OCD with the theme of pedophilia, the fear of being a pedophile, you know, the fear of having these sexual thoughts, images, things like that. The compounding factor to having this is that the world already thinks that's bad. So it makes you feel more shame and guilt for having it, which then in turn can be the risk of not taking it serious, of not believing that it's not, that it is, not believing, of, hold on, of going, oh, this is just OCD and it's not real, which we have a really hard time with intrusive thoughts because they feel so real. Sometimes it's hard to go, oh, it's just OCD, right? But sometimes the risk can feel so great that that's where you go, I can't not engage in compulsions. Do you see what I'm trying to talk about now? The risk of this is I'm too scared to believe that this can't that this is OCD because the risk would be too great. This is what so many people run into when it involves other people, especially. So pedophilia, harm, or when it involves yourself. So the suicidal theme of OCD, the risk is too great, right? Because what if it actually is suicidality? What if the risk is too great that I could snap and hurt someone? So I can't just 100% believe it's OCD, and it probably doesn't feel like OCD. It feels too real. With the health piece in particular, this is what I struggled with. Mine was the fear of rabies, because y'all know I had a couple raccoons in the house and it was really fun, but OCD ruined the experience. But the perceived threat of that, okay, I'm going to tell you exactly why this became apparent to me and why I feel like it's important to talk to. Whenever I would tell people I had raccoons, baby raccoons in the house, their first reaction was, oh my God, they're dangerous and all the diseases, ugh. So right there, my perceived threat goes well beyond OCD. Do you see what I'm saying? The world is telling me you're doing something wrong. This is awful. The only people that told me that it wasn't were actual rehabbers. Right? So you would think that I would believe the experts. But no, I believe the lay people of the world that were like, oh my God. Even though I felt like there was no risk, I took precautions, I was careful, I got them to the correct places. I knew there was no risk, but the reaction of other people made me believe that there was. So then it overrode my ability to go, well, I know there's not a risk. And I erred on the side of, but everybody else thinks so, so maybe it is. So the good thing is it eliminated being able to get reassurance. But the bad thing is, if anything that I looked up or anyone I talked to were like, oh my God, yeah, well, there's an actual perceived risk that you had rabies. No, there's not. I did not get bit and they didn't have rabies. But, you see what I'm saying? So when we transfer that over to taboo intrusive thoughts, right? That's what people get scared of, is the risk. The risk of what if, if I'm going to go tell a therapist I have intrusive thoughts about, hurting my dog or picking up a knife and stabbing someone or hurting them, if the therapist is not equipped to understand or treat OCD, they might see a perceived risk, which then in turn it might reinforce, well, is there a risk or is it OCD? Which then leads to, I don't think it's OCD because it feels so real. So I think I explained it to how you might understand it, right? So the risk can be so great, it can override even your ability to have insight, because other people around you might be like, yeah, that is risky, which is terrifying. And you may think to yourself, I just cannot believe or choose to believe that this is OCD because I can't take the risk. The risk is too great. And then you start thinking things like, what if I do decide that this is OCD, but then the risk was real and I get rabies? It's fatal. I mean, I had to accept that I might get that, and I will deal with the consequences. But in that area, in that gray area of uncertainty is so much fear. I've worked through it and that's fine, but there was so much fear there, mainly because of that risk. I see myself doing OCD compulsions. I could feel it. The people around me were like, yeah, you're doing compulsions. Get up and go do something else. But I could not override the risk because it could have been detrimental. People feel this way when it comes to intrusive thoughts about pedophilia or incest or bestiality, things like that. I mean, you can feel that in any, but I'm emphasizing the taboo intrusive thoughts because of the layer of what society thinks, right? Or, health OCD is absolutely, or mental health OCD, the fear, psychosis, things like that. You could present a list of symptoms to someone and they might go, oh yeah, you might have it, and boom, there you go. The risk overrides your ability to have insight. So then you get into this almost conflict with yourself. If the risk could be real, then what is the responsible thing to do? Was the responsible thing for me to do to go to the doctor and say, I had raccoons, one of them pinched my finger. It wasn't a bite, but it pinched it. Could it have somehow, go down the scenario of looking like an absolute batshit crazy woman saying, I think I could have contracted rabies, not through the skin, even though the animal didn't have rabies. Do I do that? Do I go get inoculated for a disease that I don't have, but I'm just worried I have, or the risk seems too great? And people that are in the position of doing exposure response prevention therapy for pedophilia, the risk, it seems too great sometimes, right? The risk of, am I going to regret that I had to do these exposures the rest of my life? Am I going to have to deal with the emotions that come along with instigating thoughts and feelings in order to do exposures? It's so much more complex. And I think that when we're missing that piece of it and not validating how real the risk feels and how personal it feels, then we might be missing the opportunity to encourage and motivate and help support people get therapy. Because I know a lot of people do not go into therapy because of the risk. Here's what I know. The way to manage OCD is to acknowledge that, yeah, there's a possibility that these things might be true. And that is terrifying when it could be detrimental to you or someone else. So when you think about that as being the solution, you might shut all the way down. I shut all the way down with health, even though I knew I was doing compulsions. I couldn't even move at one point, and I could not leave the house. I knew it, I saw it, but I just thought, I can't take the chance. The risk is too big because that disease is fatal, and I'm being irresponsible, which then made me look at every single other action of my whole damn life and to look at how irresponsible I must be, X, Y, and Z. And I went down the rabbit hole of childhood trauma. But I know what it feels like. And if you are struggling with this, I know how hard it is to identify that perceived risk and be able to take the risk and say, I realize this, but I want to get better anyway, because you are so scared of the small percent in your mind that you think could happen. Here's the deal. It could happen that I have rabies. It could happen that I have had whatever else my brain has told me in the last few months. At some point, I had to decide, am I going to stay in this place worrying all day, every day, or I'm going to accept that this could possibly be a risk that could turn into reality and then live my life anyway, with that perceived risk still in my head. Let me tell you something. I am not being flippant about this. Y'all know how I am about sayings, flippant sayings that tell you how to manage OCD. This is hard, do it anyway. I fucking hate that. But to some extent, I had to go. I can sit here and suffer in this, even though the risk feels too great, that it feels better to sit in the suffering, or I have to move forward and white knuckle it even at some point and say, I have to override the risk. In some respects, I guess I just kind of would rather know and suffer that fate, if it were true, than to continue to suffer this way and have my life pass me by. This is not easy. So please don't think that I'm saying all this as in, just go do this, this is better. What I'm trying to do is explain to you that this is a barrier for people. And you may not have realized this is a common barrier for people, especially when faced with this is how you learn how to manage it, by exposure. The risk comes in and says it's too great to even take the chance. My hope for you is please consider taking the chance and doing it with some support even. Talking about being afraid of that risk, opening up about that, getting some normalization and validation that this is not something you have to deal with alone. I hope that and want that for you, because what you don't know is so many of us experience that, and it's just not talked about that much, which is why I'm here today. I felt like it was important, especially after my experience, and it was so real to me. I wanted you to know you are not alone in this risk issue that gets in the way as a barrier. So please know that. You deserve treatment. You deserve not to suffer, no matter how great the risk seems or that society tells you. Society can fuck off. And I learned that by talking to the actual raccoon rehabber. She was, when I learned all the facts, when I learned the facts about rabies and raccoons here in the state of Colorado and things like that, I was like, wow, everything that I knew that society is teaching me is wrong. You should be careful around wild animals, whatever. But, it's almost like I was gaslighted by society to believe something, and then that came back and turned into an OCD theme. But at the end of the day, when I was already in the OCD, even the real facts that came from the rehabber to a degree didn't help, because I had bought into the risk piece. So I just want you to know that I get it and I understand, and going through what I did in the last few weeks really helped get me a little bit closer to understanding and remembering just how powerful that risk factor can be. So with that, I just want you to say, I just want to say, I hope that you're doing okay. I hope that this video resonates with you in some way if you needed to hear this message. And if you're looking for peer support, referrals, please go to ChrissyHodges.com. Check me out on Instagram at PureOChrissy, or on Facebook at Treatment for OCD Consulting. I'll see you next time.